Thank you, everyone. Was that a pleasure? Uh, Another round of applause for our amazing production. And it's an honor and a pleasure to welcome onto stage Oliver Stone. And the co-writer of the movie is Joshua Goldstein. And today only, we have Cochran from Oklo. And again, Academy Award winner Oliver Stone, Professor Joshua Goldstein from American University, and Cochran from Oklo. So, and my name is Isuru, and I'm from Nuclear, New York. We are happy to co-host this Q&A and learn a little more about how this came about. So I'll start. Just wanted to get a sense of what made you make this. What prompted you to come and make this film?
Oh, the thought of death. It's over. I have a feeling that unless we do something about it, it's only going to get harder and harder and harder. Like today in New York City, it wasn't easy to walk around. It'll get much worse. And winds, fire, all the apocalypse stuff that we were scared of as kids. It's really, and I have kids, and we think about the grandkids, and yeah, it's important. And what makes the world work? I'm not a scientist, and I don't have training, but I was curious. And what makes life go? And when you get down to the energy of life, the nuclear energy is one of the most powerful and interesting I've ever heard of. It's unbelievably, in my opinion, magical stuff. This is from another time and place. This is Star Wars. This is the future if we let it be. But there's been, as you know, so much tragedy and interference that it's, for me, a really sad issue. A real detour in human history. So it's an attempt to do something about
it. Maybe to both of you creators, you started this project before the war in Europe broke out. How has the energy crisis that from Europe grips the world, how has that affected the reception of this and there's more interest in nuclear as energy security, etc. How has that affected the work and the reception of it?
I can take that. As you saw in the film, France took fossil fuel down and replaced it with nuclear, decarbonized its grid really quickly. But they didn't do it because of climate change, which wasn't yet an issue on anyone's agenda, really. They did it because of energy security in the energy crisis of the 1973, where Middle East oil was cut off and France was running on Middle East oil. And so the realization of an industrialized country that they could be brought to their knees because some foreign power cuts off their energy supply, that's pretty shocking. And their answer was, we're going to make energy ourselves, we're going to be self-reliant, we're going to do it with, fast with this concentrated energy source. Now, fast forward 50 years, and it's the same story with Germany, we'll buy cheap Russian gas, what could go wrong? And then suddenly they don't have it and they realize they're vulnerable. They have not yet drawn the conclusion that France did, but much of the rest of Europe has. That we better really look again at nuclear energy because of security reasons, not even because of climate change. So.
Thank you, Carolyn. But before I get to Carolyn, just intro. So this movie does an amazing job showcasing how women have been at the forefront of the nuclear radiation. So from Marie Curie to Isabel Bemeke. How in the real hard science as well as on the communication side, and obviously your work is inspirational for a lot of us. What would you say? And current Miss America is a nuclear engineer as well. What would you say to young women interested in STEM, specifically nuclear, about this industry or how to get involved?
Yeah, I think it's very exciting to think about the history of women in nuclear science, and it's an untold story until I think this film did an amazing job of tying that all together. And one of the key decision makers in households and for communities can be women, and women's support of nuclear has historically been pretty low. And I think that's really shifting and it's really changing, and I think different people in this space have helped that come to the fore. Right now, the Secretary of Energy is a woman, the head of Department of Energy for Nuclear Energy is also a woman. There's a lot of women founders in the space. Isabella, as you saw in the film. My team has a number of incredible women, one woman in the audience right here. And yeah, so I think it's just so important to have women have that educational background too, and as they look at the fields that they're interested in, that's a great field to be in as well.
Some women, in fact, have compared nuclear to be like a Cinderella story. It's hated by many, but it's the most hardworking, most reliable, and prettiest. So, how and this is a perception shift, right? So, what do you think is a driver towards that realization, and how is that kind of changing in the popular perception?
Can I jump in on the women issue? Because we had people out last night handing out anti-nuclear flyers, which was great. You know, finally we're getting your attention.
Yeah.
And you know, it was just ridiculous lies down the whole sheet of paper. And then you flip it over and it's like, why women are more vulnerable and should be more afraid of nuclear power. It's a whole page about why women, you know, it's been targeted over the years because of the fear of damage to children, damage to, you know, fetuses, that whole thing, and it's been successful. As you said, you know, the public opinion shows a big gender gap in the United States and Sweden and other countries. So I'm hoping that that's beginning to change and that the film can contribute to that.
What?
Just perception shift in terms of kind of public acceptance of nuclear. Where do you see that, and where do you see it going?
Is the public starting to accept nuclear?
Well, yeah.
Which
We have the percentage we put up at the end of the movie. You saw 60% in the U.S. And most people have to be educated. That's all. They have to be advertised to or whatever. You know, but it's about leadership basically. And if you have good leadership, it can start to happen. I don't see that. I mean, if you have to commit to nuclear, as you can see from what we're saying, the intensity of the film. It's not about, oh, we're going to do this, and then maybe it's going to come to down to the wire here. I mean, it's going to get uglier and uglier, and people do nothing. They won't build it in America. They're building it in Bangladesh and in Pakistan, in China, India, Russia, obviously. Hopefully France will build more. Even Sweden and Finland too. But there's a lot of other countries. Turkey are getting into I don't see the leadership in the United States anymore because of its position in the world with NATO. So it won't be, in that sense, a leader anymore. That's what I see. So I don't know. It's not going to go well. But pressure works. Necessity is the mother of invention, in my experience in life. So whenever shit comes down to the end, there'll be really a rush to build up some of this stuff at the last second. And it won't be ready, but maybe we'll have better ways of doing it. Anyway, that's our attitude. And I think that's the attitude of the people many of the people in this world. Well, if it really comes to the worst, we'll figure it out, right?
I might add to that.
Long-term thinking is very, very tough.
I'll never forget meeting Oliver and hearing you say that you felt like this film is one of the most important thing I can do right now. And he dedicated years to making it, and it's that education that I think people are starting to hear now that's really changing things. And I think that the younger the population, the younger the person is, the more I think accepting and excited about nuclear they are. And I've seen a change in the 10 years since we started this company. So I see it dramatically changing. I think movies like this can cause the tipping point to occur. And that's really what we need is public will.
Yeah, and I think the movie does a great job of making clear that the world is moving towards nuclear, whether the U.S. helps or not, and headed by China and Russia and South Korea. So the geopolitical implications, if the U.S. wants to be relevant in the world stage, maybe that's something that we should. But just to point out, nuclear is one of the most bipartisan things in Congress right now. So it is hopeful that things will change. Maybe we open it up to questions to the audience, please, gentlemen in the back.
Yes, I think 9 months ago, maybe I wouldn't have said this out loud, but with a lot of interest, my partners and I have been waiting for this film to come out. We're developing nuclear plants in Canada and abroad, fourth generation, for industrial decarbonization. Again, 9 months ago, I may have been a little bit quieter about it, but what I really would like to know, your industry, I mean the filmmaking industry, not film, is typically been parroting Greenpeace and NRDC and Sierra Club. How have they reacted to even the suggestion of making this film, let alone are their views shifting?
Well, Hollywood's been a nightmare for the nuclear industry. 1950s films, even Dr. Strangelove, which we love, these films all contribute to the fear. And then, of course, you have the 3 Mile Island film, what's it called? China Syndrome and Silkwood. And it still goes on. Look in Korea, they had Pandora. They made it, it's good for business. Drama, tension, the end of the world, that stuff plays. This positive impressions are very hard to get from literature, from popular culture.
So how are they viewing now? How are they reacting?
The reaction to the movie.
No, there was we made this independently, we made it and we distributed it independently, and we're selling it out there in the world. We're going to do our best, but we don't have any cooperation. There's no Hollywood big giant behind us like Netflix or iTunes. We'll be out there soon on iTunes, and at least we'll get out, which is a good thing about the digital age. We'll get out. Amazon Prime.
Thank you.
So you in the middle there?
Fantastic project to all involved. It was very compelling.
Thank you.
My question to Mr. Stone is, can you describe what the collaboration process was with Vangelis before he passed away?
Well, Vangelis was a little bit sick. I worked with him on Alexandra, so I know him pretty well. And I asked him to take this project on. He's a wonderful man, but I don't know if he understood what he was doing. It was pretty complicated, the script at some points. So he was, how do you score abstract science? It's tough. And it ended up, you saw a lot of graphs, a lot of particles, a lot of movement. Yeah, it's not so easy. But he's got a mind like that because he's done space stuff. You heard it, different odysseys. And I love the fact that he got the tribute from Stephen Hawking, who he worked with Hawking at the end on that theme, that ode, and that we played a piece of it at the end of the film there, with their permission. Vangelis was a great Greek in his soul, could not stand Greeks, lived in Paris. Always used to bitch about Greece, but he was wonderful, and I miss him.
Thank you.
So you in the front?
Yeah, I want to ask Josh Goldstein. Okay. I want to ask Josh Goldstein, since we want to try to persuade the public to be comfortable with nuclear energy. You're a social scientist. How'd you get comfortable with this nuclear physics and with the perspective you present in the film, which is wonderful and sensible?
I'm a life member of the Sierra Club, and I've always been an environmentalist, kind of very high in my identity. And then I had kids, and I started to think about climate change. And then I started to learn about climate change. And the simplest way to put it is, if you do everything we're doing and everything we say is probably going to be feasible to address climate change, you only get halfway there. And you look in your bag of tricks, there's nothing left in there except nuclear power. So then, okay, I don't like nuclear power, but I guess we're going to need it, right? So then I started to learn about it, and like, wait, everything I learned about it is false, you know, it's not even true. So then I got excited about it and wrote a book about how Sweden had decarbonized really quickly with nuclear energy, with a wonderful co-author, Stefan Kvist, who's a young Swedish nuclear engineer. And yeah, there it is.
We have a few signed copies. So meet Eric, one of us, with this sign. You can read out.
And then when Oliver Stone says he wants to make a documentary, I guess you saw the review in the New York Times, and then that's fantastic because the book, it's dry, it's readable, lively for a book, but my first attempts to give you a narrative for the film, I guess it's too dry, we gotta liven it up. So then it was a lot of back and forth for how to get it across, have the science accurate, which it is, but also have it, speak to a more emotional level, because fear is the big issue that we have to take on here. And a film can take it on in a way a book never will.
So you in the corner there?
Yeah, hi. First of all, great film. Thank you for making that. And Mr. Stone, I want to thank you for the work that you've done with Ukraine and Vietnam, and really you have such an extensive background that you coming to this issue of nuclear is very relevant, because even though the population might be swaying towards nuclear now, we have to look at government intention. And so here's my question. We see that the United States would rather make other countries independent on it, whether it's the Nord Stream, right? So now what? Germany's buying gas 3 times more expensive than they were paying Russia for it. And I don't know what you know about the Nord Stream, and maybe we don't have to get into that right now. But, but how do you walk that fine line of like the politics and intention for energy, even though you have an administration that says, yes, we want green energy, yet, they're saying we need more fossil fuels and we're exporting liquefied gas to Germany.
I walked the fine line by not answering too specifically to your questions. It is a fine line, and it is a very difficult time to live through, and I'm obviously very tortured and torn. A lot of things are contradictions right now, a lot of things. So one thing is not, though. We were lied to, we were conned, and in a big way, in history terms, in the 1970s, that detour off of nuclear energy really was so damaging to us as a society. And you have to, historians will look to that, and they'll tell us again, because it depends how it turns out, but we all hope for the best. I'm an optimist. He's pessimist. Optimist. An optimist sees the possibility of people being good and doing the good thing. But then the pessimists see the bad in people, and they always emphasize that. I'm teasing you. You know what I'm talking about. Pessimism is rooted to some degree in cynicism about the race, and it's very difficult to believe with what's going on all over the world. How is these people going to pull themselves together? I understand that, but that's at the end of the movie. That's why I really feel it's important to get some momentum up, get some everyone's thinking about this. Not everyone, but most everyone. We're conscious now. The whole room, everybody, the world. You talk about this stuff, people listen, they brighten up. If they can get better, if the world can get better, everybody likes that idea. I'm saying, let's do it. Let's use our scientists, not faith, use fact, and use our scientists and take the best of what we have, which is, frankly, there all along, as from the beginning.
Speaking of optimism and pessimism, I'd like to ask Caroline a question. You're very optimistic in the film about the licensing process, and then since then I know you've had some setbacks, and maybe you could tell us how that's going, and are you optimistic now about it?
Yeah, thank you. you know, in the film, it talks about the Wright brothers, and they tried and tried, and they just went 20 feet. And I saw some viral, like, I think it was a tweet that said, you know, these planes can only fly 20 feet. How are they ever going to fly across the ocean? And of course, you know, it happens. And I'm not saying that it's inevitable, but honestly, what we're trying to do has already been done. We're working with the technology that's been proven. You saw the footage of the buildings actually in Idaho. So what really had to be solved was the licensing process, to your point, and the business model. And so we figured out the business model, and we just keep trying with the licensing process. And that's where it gets back to, I think, people are afraid of feeling or seeing failure, and it's like, oh, that thing happened, now, you know, what, can anything be done? And I'm very frustrated by narratives that are like, you know, the NRC can't, that's the US regulator for nuclear power, can't do anything, because we've seen that they can. And we got like this far, in fact, we quantified the number of topics we had to do differently because it's a whole new type of technology. 201, kind of annoyingly, if it could have been a round number, it would have been better, but only like 11 of those they really asked for more information on. So we did all these things differently and in a new way, because in my belief, you have to do licensing differently. Nuclear is going to be cost competitive. And so we're going back and we're working with them to resubmit. So that's what happens. And we're the first ones to ever submit an operating license. So it's not necessarily going to go perfectly the one-on-one first time in history.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. Really want this conversation to continue. So we, in fact, we are hosting a kind of a digest or a reflection from people from, you know, either they're pro-nuclear or on the fence or anti-nuclear. We want them to come and think about the movie and the reflection. So this is not this coming Wednesday, but the Wednesday after that. There'll be location downtown. So we'll send the details. Other thing I wanted to say is about taking action. So I watched Inconvenient Truth almost 2 decades ago and thought somebody should fix this. Nobody's fixed it. So we need to work on stuff. So one request we have is if you're a New York State resident, we have a postcard to send to our Governor Oklo, because our climate plan currently inexplicably excludes nuclear. So we want to fix that. Other thing we have is a pack of gummies. Rod Adams talked about the pinkies, the tip. Each of these is about the size of that, and it can power you for 3 months to 5 years, depending on the technology. So, hope you can join us for drinks. We're going to hand out some info about that. It's jacked out on the half a block. So, thank you again. Thank you, everyone.